Thanks so much, Sarah, for having me. Thanks for all the work that you did in order to pass this earlier legislation. I'm going to go over the history of the battle over this legislation, touching on a couple of things that Sarah's already mentioned. First of all, as Sarah told you, Title VI began as the National Defense Education Act, passed in '58 during the Cold War. It worked very well at that time. Things like the Harvard Lecture Research Center and various other area studies institutes created under that legislation were instrumental in fighting and winning the Cold War. The goal at that time, during these early years, it certainly included developing area expertise, but the focus was on language. This is what the federal government most wanted. In order to get competent people in the Foreign Service or defense and intelligence agencies, business aid projects, they needed people who essentially were fluent in the language. And so a constant struggle began, growing really as the Cold War wound down, between Congress and the universities. The universities essentially were not turning out people with top-flight language expertise. What they really wanted this program to become was a sort of no-strings entitlement. And so Congress was continually frustrated because we weren't getting language competent or area competent recruits. So you see a series of a kind of a cat and mouse game when we weren't getting recruits under Title VI, because National Defense Education Act was incorporated into the Higher Education Act in '65 as Title VI. When we weren't getting sufficient recruits, Senator Boren, who ran the Intelligence Committee, decided to create a special program, the National Security Education Program. And so this specified that if a student got funding to support language study, they would have to commit ahead of time to service in some defense or intelligence related or foreign service related agency after graduation. Well, the Academy responded to this by literally boycotting the NSEP. This was partly because they didn't want language focus, but even more it's because we had passed through the late '60s, and now there was literal opposition, foreign policy opposition, to the idea of having the universities create potential recruits to defense and intelligence agencies. So the Middle East Studies Association, the African Studies Association, various other of these studies associations literally said, we are not going to be supportive of students who apply for the National Security Education Program. And after that didn't work out very well in terms of drawing recruits, we hit 911. And of course, there were tremendous problems. They realized after 911 that some of the transmissions of the hijackers had actually been received, but we didn't have enough people who were competent in the language to translate those transmissions, and that really was just the tip of the iceberg. Essentially, there was a desperate need throughout the entire government for people who were language competent in different Middle Eastern areas, and we didn't have any. So now you had Pat Roberts created the Pat Roberts Fellowships, another attempt to create a dedicated fellowship that people would commit on going into it to serve in intelligence agencies afterwards. And this again was boycotted and objected to strongly by the academics. President Bush created a special language training program, and there was, I don't know if there were formal boycotts on this one, but there was constant grousing very publicly by the Academy about these language programs. So back and forth it goes. The Title VI money rarely produces recruits for the federal government. And when Congress tries to create a special program, there's a boycott or direct opposition. And so essentially, this Title VI money becomes a no-strings entitlement, and the federal government, which is only doing this because it wants to support the study of strategic languages and develop this potential body of recruits. Of course, it's true that they want to encourage general knowledge of important areas in the world, but that's secondary, and so the primary goal of the program simply isn't being filled. So after 911, we had this language shortage. Martin Kramer published his extraordinary book, Ivory Towers on Sand, And I began to publicize some of these problems. Eventually we had a congressional hearing, and the situation at that time was that everyone felt very acutely the lack of language competent people for recruitment. And then we had these boycotts, which some of which were open, like the Middle East Studies Association literally saying we're going to boycott the National Security Education Program, but some were basically kept quiet. The Title VI centers never openly and formally boycotted, but in fact, we know in at least one case, there was an underground boycott, and one of the things I did at the hearing was to expose some memos where essentially the African Studies Association had a meeting because one African Studies Center in Wisconsin had broken the boycott, accepted a relationship with the National Security Education Program, and then the rest of the African Studies field came down on them. And they had a big meeting and they reaffirmed their boycott. And an informant gave me the emails on that. And by the way, if you want to learn the history of this boycott, the Campus Watch website preserves on a page with my name on it a lot of old articles about this. Another article that is absolutely worth finding on the Campus Watch website is called Learning the Language, written by Kenneth Whitehead. Kenneth Whitehead ran the Title VI program under the Reagan administration, and he talks about this struggle with the Academy, the attempt to find language competent people, the Academy's attempt to frustrate that. And another thing that had happened at this point is that Title VI started out with a board. Almost all federal programs have some kind of oversight board. But on the one side, academia objected to the existence of an oversight board. And on the other side, when this was proposed, the Republicans saw an opportunity to cut another layer of government bureaucracy. And so what you got was the elimination of any kind of a board, which was highly unusual. One of the things I did at the hearing was to propose that a board be restored. And this was claimed to be some kind of terrible infringement of academic freedom, when in fact almost every federal government program in academia has and needs to have some kind of oversight board. So I gave my testimony. I won't go into the details of the battle, except to say that there's another problem. Well, let me say something about the outreach programs. These outreach programs are not part of the college curriculum. In effect, they're mandated by Congress. These are any kind of public panel or the special training seminars for K-12 teachers. So what you have here is something that Congress is mandating, but that's getting no oversight. And one of the interesting things we did, and you can see this in a piece I wrote called Saudi in the Classroom, the Saudis are funding a considerable number of these area study centers to do their public outreach. And the curriculum there, I think many Americans would find highly controversial and politically biased. And there's no oversight in this. So again, one of the things I think we need, and that I was asking for at the hearings, was some form of oversight on parts of these area study centers that are not part of the college curriculum, that are in fact mandated by Congress. So the legislation was passed, and we got the placement survey, which theoretically would tell us how many people are actually going into government service, and then when these grants are awarded to select area studies programs, we could look at their record of placing people in the federal government. But it's an open question as to whether these placement surveys are being taken or taken seriously. Then we had language that looks very anodyne, you might not even notice it, but we say that the program should encourage government service. That seems meaningless, but in fact it's very important. It means that if we can find clear and concrete evidence that an area studies center is participating in a boycott of federal scholarship programs like the NSEP, then they're clearly in violation of the intent of Congress, and it's obvious that a case could be made that they shouldn't receive a grant again. Reflect diverse perspectives and a wide range of views. Again, as I see it, this applies chiefly to the outreach programs, which are not part of the college curriculum and are a creature of Congress, and it's perfectly reasonable to ask that there be a variety of points of view. And there's even a rule of construction in the legislation says that Congress should and the government should not be able to mandate or control the content of the college curriculum. But it would be a big change if we could do something about the public outreach programs. Now, the problem is these things have passed. I don't believe they're being enforced. At least I've seen no evidence of it. And we don't have a board. Another option is to have a grievance procedure, which again, as I see it, would apply fundamentally to the outreach programs, where people could put in, every university could create their own grievance procedure. If the grievance isn't properly resolved, it could be referred to the Department of Education, and theoretically those grievances should be taken into account the next time the grant is up for renewal. Another option, and this will be the last thing I say, is to cut the money. To cut the money. And the truth is, this program is not producing results. Or there's really no other part of the university curriculum that gets an outright subsidy from the federal government. It's strictly because of this special national security need that the subsidy is even there in the first place. I used to believe that it was impossible to cut this funding. However, after the 2010 election, the House became much more conservative, as some of you might have heard a rumor to that effect. And at that point, 40% of the monies under Title VI were cut. By the way, they had been increased by, I think, 25 or maybe 30% after 9/11. But now 40% of those monies were cut. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it would be a mistake to increase that money. I don't think it would be wrong necessarily to cut it further, especially in the absence of evidence that these reforms are being enforced. And the truth is you'll see in Kenneth Whitehead's article, who used to run the program for the federal government, it's actually the federal, this is a case where the government works better than the private sector, I'm afraid. The Defense Language Institute and the Foreign Service Language Institute produce regularly more language competent graduates than come out of these higher education establishments. So one remedy is simply to cut the money. Remember, this is a contract in effect between the federal government and the universities. They don't have to take this money. This is a voluntary thing. Federal government said, here are our goals. University says, okay, we're going to advance those goals, now give us the money. So this is, there is no federal, there is no freedom of speech, and academic freedom doesn't entitle you to a federal subsidy. So cutting the money is an option. All right.